Let me slow this down and really unpack it because most men hear this advice, agree with it intellectually, and then completely fail to apply it in real life. Never try to impress a woman. Not sometimes. Not a little bit. Not in subtle ways. Never. Because the moment you try, the dynamic is already broken, even if everything still looks fine on the surface. When you do not like someone, you naturally do not talk to them enthusiastically. You do not share your thoughts. You do not open up. You do not feel the urge to explain yourself or bring them into your inner world. You respond when necessary. You keep things short. And emotionally, you stay distant without even trying to. This is not a strategy. This is your natural behavior when there is no interest. Most men do not wake up and say, "Today, I will try to impress a woman." It happens automatically. Attraction triggers it. The moment you like her, your behavior shifts. Your tone changes. You become more careful. You become more expressive. You become more explanatory. You start adding context to things that do not need context. You start filling silence that does not need to be filled. And you do all of this without realizing why. And this is where things start to become interesting. Because sharing what is in your mind is not neutral. Sharing is an act of attraction. Sharing is an invitation. Sharing is a way of saying, I want you to see me, I want you to know me, I want you inside my world. The more interested you are in someone, the stronger this urge becomes. You want to talk more, you want to explain more, you want to accelerate closeness, you want to reduce distance as fast as possible, you want her approval, you want her to see you in a certain way, you want her to understand that you are not like other men, you want her to notice your intelligence, your depth, your emotional awareness, your discipline, your lifestyle. And every one of these intentions, no matter how well packaged, communicates the same thing, that you are seeking validation. Women do not evaluate men the way men evaluate women. Men often fall in love with potential, with effort, with loyalty, with intention. Women do not. Women respond to position. They respond to where you place yourself relative to them. And the moment you try to impress, you are placing yourself below. This is why trying to impress never works long-term. Even if it creates short-term attraction, even if she laughs, even if she responds positively, even if the date goes well, something underneath is being damaged. Because attraction for women is not built on what you say. It is built on what you do not need to say. Most men think attraction comes from adding value through words, through stories, through personality, through showing layers, through depth. They think that if they just explain themselves better, if they articulate their thoughts more clearly, if they express their emotions more intelligently, the woman will finally see them. But this is the exact opposite of how attraction works. If something is real, it does not need explanation. If something is solid, it does not need justification. If something is natural, it does not need presentation. Think about confidence. Truly confident men do not talk about confidence. They do not define it. They do not explain it. They do not demonstrate it consciously. It just exists. And the moment someone talks about confidence, you already know it is not real. The same applies to intelligence, emotional depth, ambition, discipline, masculinity, stability. The more a man talks about these things, the less of them he actually has. Because people talk about what they are trying to convince themselves of. Now here is where most men get confused. They say, but if I do not talk, how will she know who I am? How will she understand me? How will she see my value? And that question alone reveals the problem. You are assuming that your value depends on her understanding it. You are assuming that it is your job to make her see it. And that assumption places you beneath her. Women are not attracted to men who explain themselves. They are attracted to men who do not feel the need to be understood immediately. Men who are comfortable being partially unknown. Men who are not in a rush to be seen. Think about how you act around people you genuinely see as below your level. You are not rude. You are not arrogant. You are simply neutral. You do not overperform. You do not overshare. You do not try to manage their perception of you. You let them think whatever they want. And that emotional position is exactly what creates attraction. Now think about a woman you had absolutely zero interest in. Almost every man has had at least one such woman in his life. You were not rude to her. You were not cold. You were simply indifferent. You barely talked. You did not ask personal questions. You did not share stories. You did not volunteer information about yourself. You replied when you had to, and that was it. And what happened in many of those cases? Very often the opposite person became more interested in you. Not less. More. This confuses men because they assume attraction grows from effort and engagement. But in reality, attraction often grows from distance and restraint. Of course, there are other factors involved when you are not interested in someone. Your body language changes. Your tone is more grounded. Your reactions are slower. You are not trying to manage their emotions. You are not trying to be liked. All of these things contribute to attraction. But one of the biggest factors is still the fact that you do not talk much and you do not share much. That alone has a massive impact on how attractive you appear. Trying to impress can be loud, but it is often quiet. It can be bragging, but it can also be explaining. It can be showing off, but it can also be justifying. It can be listing achievements, but it can also be listing values. It can be talking about money, but it can also be talking about mindset. For example, talking about how disciplined you are, talking about how you wake up early, talking about how focused you are on self-improvement, talking about how you are not like other men. All of this is still impressing. It is still performance. It is still saying, please notice me. And women feel this instantly, even if they cannot articulate it, even if they enjoy the conversation, even if they say they like you. Something inside them tightens. Because effort is masculine only when it is directed at purpose, not approval. Now compare this to how women behave when they are attracted. They try, they ask questions, they fill silence, they seek reassurance, they talk more, they invest emotionally. And the moment you reverse roles by trying to impress, you remove the opportunity for her to do that. Because the moment you stop sharing, the other person starts filling the gap. They start wondering. They start imagining, they start projecting qualities onto you that may not even exist. And projection is far more powerful than reality. Attraction grows in space, not in explanation, not in effort. Space creates curiosity. Effort kills it. This is why silence is powerful, not awkward silence. Calm silence, comfortable silence. Silence that says, I am fine here. Silence that says, I do not need to entertain you. Silence that says, I am not afraid of pauses. Now contrast this with what happens when you are on a first date with a woman you really like. What do? Almost instinctively, you start talking more. You start explaining yourself. You start sharing your opinions, your past, your experiences, your struggles, your worldview. You start working your mouth nonstop. And why do you do this? Because in your mind, the relationship is already advanced. In your imagination, she is already close to you. You already feel emotionally connected, and you want the external reality to catch up with your internal state. Most men are terrified of silence on dates. They feel responsible for the emotional flow. They feel like they must keep things interesting. They feel like if they stop talking, the connection will die. And so they talk, and talk, and talk, and every word pushes attraction slightly further away. If you ever wonder why women sometimes seem more attracted to men who say less, this is why. It is not mystery for the sake of mystery, it is emotional positioning. Avoiding the urge to talk, especially in the early stages, is one of the hardest things to do. Even when you intellectually understand this dynamic, emotionally it is very difficult to apply. You constantly have to remind yourself to stop talking, to slow down, to hold back. And even then, most of the time you fail. You get carried away. The conversation feels good. She seems engaged. She asks questions. She responds positively. And you take that as a green light to continue. And this is where the biggest misunderstanding happens. Because in the moment, her reaction might be positive. She might smile. She might nod. She might say she likes that you are open. She might even say that she values communication, transparency, and vulnerability. Many women say this. Almost all women say this, but what women say say they want and what they emotionally respond to are two very different things. This is not about lying or manipulation. It is about understanding human behavior. Attraction does not grow from comfort alone. Attraction grows from uncertainty, tension, and gradual discovery. When you give everything up front, there is nothing left to discover. Taking it slow is not passive, it is strategic restraint. Letting her talk is not weakness, it is strength. She should be the one talking more, especially early on. She should be the one investing emotionally first, because the person who invests more is always the one who is more attached.
Many men experience the same pattern repeatedly. They promise themselves not to talk too much, not to share too much, not to over-explain. But once the conversation starts flowing, once the woman opens up, once deeper topics come up, they follow her into those conversations without restraint. Women naturally enjoy deep conversations. They do not do this consciously to manipulate. It is simply how they connect emotionally, and men mistake this emotional depth for attraction.
And then something subtle but very important happens. Her respect starts to decrease little by little. Not suddenly, not dramatically, gradually. In the beginning, she might have been careful around you. She might have chosen her words carefully. She might have been slightly nervous, slightly reserved. But as you keep talking, as you keep explaining yourself, as you keep revealing your thoughts and opinions, she starts seeing you clearly. Another mistake men make is assuming that being kind, respectful, and emotionally available means explaining themselves. It does not. You can be polite without being eager. You can be warm without being open. You can be respectful without being transparent. Transparency is earned, not given. A woman should slowly earn access to your thoughts, your emotions, your plans, your inner world. The moment you give it away freely, it loses value. Not because women are manipulative, but because humans value what requires effort. This is also why compliments must be rare and controlled. Compliments are a form of approval. Approval is power. The person who gives approval holds the higher position. If you give too much approval too early, you lower yourself. A small, controlled compliment followed by neutrality is powerful. A long, emotional compliment is not. It puts pressure on her and removes tension. Attraction needs tension. The goal is not to impress her. The goal is to observe her, to see how she behaves, to see how she treats you, to see how she invests, to see how she reacts when you do not give her everything. And this is where most men fail, because they are outcome focused. They want the date to go well. They want her to like them. They want a second date. They want certainty. And the need for certainty creates behavior that destroys attraction. Men who succeed are not focused on being chosen. They are focused on whether they choose. You are not proving anything by talking. You are not increasing your value by explaining. You are not creating attraction by expressing pure emotions. At the end of the day, what you say does not matter nearly as much as you think it does. No woman bases her attraction on the quality of your explanations or the purity of your emotions. When you stop trying to impress, the entire dynamic flips. She starts wondering where she stands. She starts questioning herself. She starts trying to earn your attention, not because you are manipulative, but because you are not needy. And neediness is the real enemy here. Impressing is just a symptom. The root is the belief that her reaction defines your worth. Once you remove that belief, the behavior disappears naturally. You stop trying, you stop performing, you stop explaining, you stop selling yourself. And paradoxically, that is when attraction has the space to grow. This is not about playing games. This is not about being cold. This is not about acting dominant. This is about emotional self-sufficiency. A man who does not need to impress is a man who already feels complete. And that completeness is what women respond to. The hardest part is accepting this truth and applying it when emotions are involved. Because logic disappears when desire shows up. But this is exactly why discipline matters. The man who can control himself when he likes a woman is the man who keeps her interest alive. So if you take one thing from this, let it be this. The moment you feel the urge to impress, pause, say less, do less. Let the moment breathe, let her fill the gap, and trust that you do not need to prove anything to be chosen.